Should be topic number 3 is, well, so this is a two-parter actually. Is Marxism just historical or dialectical materialism? Is this the objective or scientific aspect that Marxists harp on? Of course, this came with a link. Takes us to Twitter, it seems. And there's a tweet here by M. Fergus Gabain, or whatever it is, at Uncle Authority. It says, it should rightly be called dialectical historical materialism. The Marxism label was derived from ideological opponents attempting to smear it as Jewish ideology. It was embraced by the supporters on the grounds of who gives a fuck if Marx is a Jew, he's right, and it stuck. So I did that wrong. I guess it was Shakara who had a tweet first. And he said, wait a minute. He says, I guess I got to go to the original tweet to get the understanding here. So Shakara says, and shout out to Shakara, he subscribed to the channel. Hopefully one day we could get him on too. I know he's in the UK, so it might be hard with the time thing, like it is with Jose. He said, question, if Marxism requires decolonizing, is this not evidence of its colonial or / Eurocentric nature? Note, I wholeheartedly agree people should study Rodney, but I posit that Marxism decolonized is in fact no longer Marxism, except maybe via an emotional attachment to Marx. And that was a response to a tweet. My friend, you should read Decolonial Marxism by Walter Rodney, and remember that African scientific socialists critiqued and improved Marxism for African context, making it no longer Eurocentric. It's a tool of revolution that you can make applicable to the conditions of any. All right, so that goes back to the tweet that was posted with this prompt. The response by M. Fergus is it should be rightly called dialectical historical materialism. The Marxism label was derived from ideological opponents attempting to smear it as Jewish ideology. It was embraced by the supporters on the grounds of who gives a fuck if Marx is a Jew, he's right, and it stuck. Okay, so now that actually helps my understanding of what it is being discussed here. So the prompt says, is Marxism just historical or dialectical materialism? Is this the objective or scientific aspect that Marxists harp on? Let me start with, is Carl. Carl, is your sound fixed up? Or should I come back to you? Look like Carl might be busy still. Bakari, you mentioned Gaviism earlier. Talk about it in terms of this prompt here for me. Oh, was I?
I was listening, but I really didn't understand. But I can just say what you was reading. You was reading a tweet from, I guess, Shakara. That's where this came from. I watch that. I watch him sometime too. But I was trying to get an understanding exactly what you're saying. But Marxism, that's what socialism comes. You know, the thing for me, I just don't. I just don't see how the socialist thing is meant. It's gonna build black people up, especially over here in this part of the world, right? You don't have your own country. They have a government set up, right? You don't want to fight them to change the government. So instead of supporting Garveyism, who had an economic plan, co-op, group ownership, then they had individual ownership. Instead of supporting something that we saw worked, that black people did over here by using a system that they have to create our own, we complain about their system and say we should be socialists, but you're not gonna be a socialist over here. That's just me. I don't understand it. I don't know if Marxism is materialism. I don't know, but even in Marxism and being a socialist, they have to use capital. So in a sense, they are, in a sense, they're capitalists as well. And I heard say, is that like a form, if they want to knock down colonization, is that like a form of colonization? I guess it would be, because they want to stop capitalism so they can colonize you with their ideas and tell you that is the only way that's right. And I hope what I said made sense. And I'm gonna give the mic.
Now, any contribution you give is a good contribution, for real. I know Tanzan stepped away. Jose, what say you?
I yeah. Earlier you said you something about giving concepts our own names, and maybe that's the solution for this whole subject, because the subject socialism or communism or whatever, uh, uh, in that corner is you know, I believe we are a social people, so the solutions that we come up, if you zoom in, we talk about group economics, and group economics is as social as fuck, so to speak. But we are against socialism. This is a difficult subject, in my belief, and I believe also experience, because there's a lot of contradiction in our people's speaking, especially from that side of the Atlantic. And so what I believe in general, as an umbrella thought, is that we indeed need to give we need to throw away those words, like socialism. Another example, for example, the colonial wars, or Cuba. Those weren't specifically communist sentiment that made us make the choices that we did choose. The world has been bipolar in Soviet days, and so if the West condemns you and calls you a terrorist for fighting for your freedom, then who do you deal with? Then yeah, your children will go to study in universities in Eastern Europe and other Soviet countries, right? Instead of the West. So uh, 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 yeah, we need names for our. And maybe it's impossible, because the world speaks of in terms of democracy and dictatorship and regime or government, and so maybe it's impossible, but these words, socialism and communism, are more trigger words than we actually speak about what it potentially can be, and that's where I pass the mic.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jay. Yeah, you're right. I think one of the hurdles we have to get over is these naming things too. We gotta really name things to who we are. I like what Gas said. Gas is dropping some nice comments in the chat. So you guys who are listening live or in the playback, check out the chat, see what Gas and Trigger Happy and Lero is talking about. Good conversation going on. But yeah, the problem with these white folks is, whether they be Jewish or whatever, these white folks' ideologies, I look at it like you're boiling down kale, like cooking kale or something. Like, they boil it down to the most fundamental thing, and they take away the human aspect of it, and that's not really our thing. That's not our thing. Someone is trying to speak. Who's that? All right. Let's go to Tanzan. Tanzan, what say you?
Yes, sorry. Um, what I say, me? Oh, shoot. What I say is that I think for me is the end and the means, because there's two aspects to, we are living under two different realities. We're living under the reality of who we are and what we are under. So for me, I don't have any attachment to either one or the other. I say use what you have to get what you want. So, if you're living in a society where you need to do one, two, three, then that's what you have to do. We shouldn't be married to one idea or the other. We should be able to use whichever one that benefits us the most. And in terms of whether one or the other, yeah, we had, we would work together. I don't know if we would call that, either one or the other, and people would make, would create, they would exchange and so on. But the other aspect is that we're living in a reality where, even though it's skewed, we still have to, work with what we have. So, for me, it's, whether it's materialism or scientific and so on. I think that is both two sides of the same coin, and that coin is, the value, the making, and this is, yeah, I'll give credit where it's due. That's, Gaston Marx's concept of, the value of labor, because Marx was also not exempt from that in making labor, worth a certain amount and making it into, a commodity. So either way, it's like the way you get that binary, Republican versus Democrat, left versus right. You always just get two choices. And, if there's a third or there's another concept that's different from, the mainstream, is considered absolutely beyond, the imagination. So I think we're also still limited to this. It has to be one or the other. And we can use what is here, but we can also, imagine something more based on, what we want. So yeah, just like these countries, nobody's a full, socialist or capitalism or all. They just use what benefits them the most, and they attach whichever name. Like, you can have the positive names, and then, to malign your opponent, the go-to word is that whole, oh, they're fascists or this and that, or they're anti this and anti that. So, you can name anything that you don't like, whatever that you like, when the World War II, they had the Allies versus the Axis. Who named the Allies Allies, and the other ones the Axis, and the same axis of evil popped up again, some decades later. So however you name things is what works for you. If Africans wanted to take hold of that linguistic battle, instead of following some, Western description or, nomenclature, they should come up with their own system and their own names for it, and then make that their own. So, yeah, I'll end with that.
I appreciate that, Tan. I think Carl is back. Carl, go ahead.
Is the sound any better?
You're much better.
Okay, all right. So, I think that historical and dialectical materialism is definitely a an important part of Marxism. It's not the only part, but it's definitely an important part, because you have to come to an analysis through studying history. And I think Marx, because he was studying European history, specifically England, and how England changed from feudalism to capitalism, uh, there are some elements of Marxism that have value, but it's not a perfect fit when comparing the conditions of African people and other colonized people across the world. So when I look at it as far as socialism, which basically means that the means of production, the way that people earn their living, should be owned communally, should be owned by each other, instead of in a capitalist system in which the means of production are privately owned. I think that, Marx, they called it socialism, but it's basically the way that most people on the planet live their lives for most of history. everybody worked together. The land wasn't owned by just one person. The land was owned communally. Many cultures didn't even have a concept that you could own land. It belonged to the people. So, Marx and, other people who are in his Engels, other socialists, they call it socialism. But it's really what was done by most of the human race for most of history. Um, and I think that because we live in a world that is controlled and really dominated by capitalism, I think that it does provide a way for us to analyze our condition and come up with some alternative ways. Uh, Fred Hampton said, "You don't fight fire with fire. You don't fight. You fight capitalism with socialism." And it's an alternative system. But I do think we have to have a historical analysis of the conditions that we live in, because without it, you can't really form a correct conclusion. But again, whose history are we looking at? Are we looking at the history of England? Are we looking at the history of West Africa? We're looking at the history of India and all the other places of the world. I think it's such a Eurocentric focus that I think many people have tried to add on to that. Many African people like Thomas Sankara was a socialist, a Marxist. You have different Walter Rodney, um, Kwame Ture. These are people who understood that, but yet, it's more of just a way to question the society and come up with a solution, because even though capitalism was an improvement over the previous system, feudalism, it's run its course. So Marx, and he was wrong about a lot of things, because he really felt that the so-called revolution would come from the working class. He underestimated the resilience of capitalism to give the workers more rights, as opposed to oppressing them more, and draw the workers closer to the system, the capitalist system that's oppressing them. So uh, I do think that it is historical materialism, and we need that, but we have to tailor it for our needs as African people and how it'll fit our situation. Our history is not the same as their history. So we just have to look at it, take what we need from it, analyze it, and then build from there. All right. And I'm done on my part. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Carl. I feel like I haven't heard from the forecast in a minute. Forecast, what say you?
Well, all right, I'll say this, I think the question is confusing, because like I think, like Oni said, people don't actually, study what it is. Like the brother just came on and mentioned like feudalism, how he studied European history. Like you rarely hear people even mention that part of him. And then even when you say the Jewish thing, like, like he was like super anti, maybe like Hitler, you know what I'm saying? Hitler is supposed to have Jewish ancestry. He's supposed to have Jewish ancestry, but most of his stuff was against him. And like I said, I don't think that people are on it, because he was like, yo, we need to get rid of the classes that's not up to the level that we're on. And he also talked about how, you use capitalism, and now we have to transform up past that. But if you wouldn't even get to the capitalist part, you know what I'm saying? I don't even know why you're saying that. But I think that, in my opinion, we should look at it differently, like how we own things, you know what I'm saying? Like let's pretend like we're not on YouTube and we're on Bitter Medicine. Like, now, would you say that, Koku, you should own like you built this channel up, the bittermedicine.com, KWAZ you know what I'm saying? Like, should we all get a piece of that? You know what I'm saying? Should you own it privately, or, you know what I'm saying, should some kind of government system own that? And I think that, like, there, you can't, like, it's not just one way, I believe in like having my own thing that I built, because like, you may see labor as one thing. It could be the labor that I put into my own company, you know what I'm saying? But you also have communal aspects. Like, if we want to have a school district, like, you can, as a group, decide how you want to tax each other, you know what I'm saying? If you want to put a thing on the wealthy people or not, that's up to the group, you know what I'm saying? I think it should be up to the group. But I think that like, if we want to put our money together, like we all own this school, or we all own this business, so we all have equal say as a community, you know what I'm saying? I think there's different aspects, and obviously you're gonna have to put it together to build a society. You're gonna have to have some kind of way to pay a military. I think you should pay teachers and stuff like that. There's a lot of aspects that you're gonna need, you know what I'm saying? So it's going to be social programs that benefit you. But I also think that, you know, if you put handcuffs on me, like say if you have $100,000 business and $1 million business, one question that I would have is like, why would I continue to like work hard as the dude making $100,000? Like, I know if I'm gonna get cut right there, you know what I'm saying? Why would I continue to do that? I'll just work as hard as him. But that's just me, you know what I'm saying? I think that's how most people would be. That's my opinion, but you know, but I'll pass the mic though.
Yeah, forecast. I think you're summing up really where we are, where we are at right now. There's all of these questions. There's pros and there's cons for all of these different systems that these people have around us in this reality that they have us in. And we're going to have to build something, I think, based on what you just said and all, we're going to have to build something that takes pieces of things. Like Lero says in the chat, we can't go back and sit in the village anymore. As nice as that may sound, we just can't go sit in the village and, you know, scrape up some ground nuts and drink palm wine. And I mean, that's nice, but we're in a world where we have the antagonist in this world. We have the antagonist, and we can't. So we're gonna have to figure out these things in a way that resonates with us, so to speak, but that also delivers us to power in the future. And that's the hard thing. This is why I think these conversations are so dope. And I want to remind you guys, this is just part A of Shoot the Breeze topic number 3. There is a part B. So I'm going to get to Oni and Buana, but before that, let me go to Bakari. Bakari had some questions, I think, for Carl. Bakari, go ahead.
Okay, this is like a compound question because Carl, he spoke after me. And this is a question I always ask all the Marxists or socialists or whatever. That's because I'm focused, right? I'm focused on Black folks. I want to know, who are these other oppressed people in the world, and what does that have to do with Black people?
Okay. So to answer your question, as far as the other oppressed people in the world, because number one, Native Americans are oppressed, Indians are oppressed, Aboriginal Australians are oppressed, and Palestinians are oppressed, Latin Americans are oppressed. So what that has to do with Black people is that we are all under the same system. We're all being oppressed by the same people, by the same ideologies. So I think that it's important that we learn from people who are oppressed across the world, because we can learn from each other. And one thing about it is that the people who oppress us are united. Even though white people have fought amongst each other, they've killed each other, when it comes to the business of ruling the world, they're united. So I think that as African people and other people who are oppressed with the world, we all should have an understanding of how we are oppressed and how we are dealing with the systems and institutions of global white domination and how it affects us.
Okay.
Bakari, can I say one thing real quick, Bakari?
Wait a minute, Forecast. I'm gonna say this right quick, then I'm done. So the Native Americans oppressed Black people when they enslaved them, took them across their trail. But hey, let's make sure we stand up for them slave owners.
No, that's a little bit unfair, because not every Native
No, it's
American
not unfair. It is not. You're right. The other ones, they were slave catchers. So
not all of them.
So see, because I'm gonna show you what you're doing, and this why I think Black socialists, in a sense, is kind of weak, because they don't think they can do nothing for themselves. They got to include other people. They're just like the other Black people saying, all white people wouldn't slave owners, all white people wouldn't slave catchers. So why do you call it white domination? See, we willing to give this person up. I don't care what the white people do to the Indians. That me personally. In Palestine, we know the Black people was in that part of the world first. But them Arabs that's called Palestine now took it from African people. Now the Jews kicked their butt, and I'm supposed to care about the Palestinians. Black people need to learn to stay focused on Black people. That's just my take on it. You named Fred Hampton, who I would say was a great man, but I did not agree with that rainbow push stuff that they was holding for everybody. Kwame Ture. I love Kwame Ture. Know his ex, know his stepdaughter. And I tell you, didn't agree with none of that. Because every other group is focused on them. That's why when you look here, you see, because you said, that's why you see Latinos in this country surpassing Black people in every way, because they are focused on them. We the only people in the world want to focus on everybody else, and we don't have enough food to feed ourselves. Go ahead, Fouquet.
No, well, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I think that Black people always be like, yo, black and brown, black and yellow. But yo, since the very beginning, like Indians have turned their back. Like every single rebellion, like all of them, like they use Indians, you know, they enslaved you. Like even to this day, you know what I'm saying, they exclude the Black people from their camps, you know what I'm saying? And the only time that they come to us is like, you know, when Trump was in office, it was black and Mexican, black and brown, you know what I'm saying? Then by now nobody cares, you know what I'm saying? When they get whatever they get, they're not including you. I'm like, until we get in casinos and all of that stuff sharing with them, like why are we saying like, you know, black and Indian, you know what I'm saying? So
I appreciate that, Bakari, Carl, and the forecast. Hey, I issue this to the panelists. If you guys like the conversation you see going on in the chat, give them a 1. You know, usually I ask it the other way around, or give them a fire emoji, because Lero and Trigger Happy and Gas Them Up are really having a good conversation out there. Azuli, what say you? Is Azuli still there? Unmute your mic if you're there. Maybe Azuli fell asleep.
Azuli finally agree with her with being Bakari, so he ain't got nothing to say.
I guess so. Did I get Real Black Gentleman on this?
No, I mean, basically, it's like, I mean, I don't like to go into Marxism. I know it don't apply to me. I know it's nonsense. I know it's just so exercise and futility to try to like replicate, you know what I'm saying, and make manifest, you know what I'm saying, those ideas of that white man who thought that the nigger was the most odious. I don't have time for that. I dismiss that. I'm not even going to give no more breath to that. I yield.
I appreciate that sentiment and the brevity there. Let's switch it up a little bit. Let's hear from Buana. Buana, what's it?
Cool. It's for me. This topic is a hard pass too, because everybody know where I stand on Marxism. Yeah, I really don't have nothing to really contribute seriously to the problem. I mean, the brothers who are very proficient, Carl and Brother Bakari and Oni, but to give a solid theoretical exegesis on these kinds of things. Everyone knows my sentiments are, so I'll hard pass this particular problem.
I appreciate that one. And in fact, this is what we were calling for at the beginning of the show, right? For the socialists, etc., to come up and discuss it. Now, remember, this is part A. We still got part B to get.
Yeah, if that's Marxism too, you can hard pass me on that too.
All right. But it's about Garveyism, the part B. So I think I'll go.
Okay, I can touch that. I can touch that. Yeah.
Oni, what say you?
Yeah. So when I was on Twitter, so this is actually a pretty cool Marxist on Twitter. Goes by Omari, but no, sorry, not Marxist. Garveyite. On Twitter goes by Omari. But I said, look, on Twitter, I said people say Marx is scientific because he uses the Hegelian dialectic. Yet the Hegelian dialectic isn't even scientific. Make sense. So Omari said, you know, playing devil's advocate here, it's argued that Marx flipped Hegel's dialectic on its head and based it on materialism, and that's what makes it scientific. And so in response, I said, the whole thesis, antithesis, synthesis isn't scientific. I don't see how taking a flawed historiography and claiming to be materialist somehow makes something scientific. I think it's philosophical, but it's not scientific. And I think that's what really comes down to. So, you know, it's kind of like what Omari was saying about, you know, the Marxists are saying, you know, really it's dialectical materialism, right? And I think, I'm not sure, let me read this comment. I mean, let me see what the Twitter says. It says, I think the Twitter comment says, yeah, dialectical historical materialism. Yeah, materialism. Yeah, I mean, if people understood what Hegelian dialectics were, because that's another thing too. If I think it was, I remember the white Marxists used to say that you can't understand Marxism unless you understand Hegelian dialectics, right? And so this is the short of it. The short of it is that, you know, Hegel comes with this idea that let's say every social phenomena or something like that, just simplify it, is between a thesis, an antithesis, and then the synthesis of the two, so that, let's say, the thesis being feudalism and the antithesis being or like the feudal lords, the antithesis being the bourgeoisie, and then the synthesis of that is capitalism, kind of thing, and this is why they say communism outgrows from capitalism, because you need the bourgeoisie, like the bourgeoisie being the synthesis and being the thesis, and the proletariat being the antithesis, and they come together, and then after they fight, they kind of, the next thing is going to be a communism or something, so forth, right? I mean, I obviously I said I was going to simplify it, and I know it sounds complicated, but long story short, it's a flawed paradigm. Not everything comes about from thesis, antithesis to synthesis. That's just a model that Hegel may have used to describe some historical phenomena he saw in Europe, and Marx may have used to try to postulate on the next sort of circumstance to happen in Europe. But realistically, that's not a scientific point of view, and it's easily countered through just a regular analysis of history. Not just that, it's the thing that I realized with regard to white people is that essentially, a lot of white people of Marx's generation know history based off of like a false history, like a false historical narrative. So they get, like, they're trying to theorize a historical narrative based off of erasing black people, and so a lot of what they see is, oh, look, this changed and that changed and this happened, and they're saying this, and it's like, what's going on? It's magical, but they don't realize, or they're just coming upon a history that doesn't include the African element. So there's a lot to there's a lot to process, but whatever this author was saying is along the lines of should it really be called dialectical materialism? Probably, but again, it's not like calling it dialectical materialism versus Marxism doesn't really change much in as much as it just, if people actually understood dialectical materialism or dialectics from a perspective of a learned modern day historical paradigm, you'll see, oh, actually, this dialectical stuff doesn't really apply. It doesn't work. It definitely doesn't apply in Africa. And it's just not a universal, it's not a real scientific thing. And I say that because one thing we have to realize about science, the thing that most people like about science is that it doesn't matter where you are, it applies the same way,
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. And so when it comes to like for instance, general relativity applies one way. Physics applies one way. But when it comes to, or like, if I do, if I do calculus in Brazil, it's the same as I do calculus in Botswana. But the whole, all class antagonism, class content, so on and so forth, it's not a real thing unless you take into account that white folk are different. And when you take into account that white folk are different, and maybe this applies to white folk, you as a black person have to say, well, maybe this applies to white folk. And that's like that's my perspective too. When I look at Marxism, I say, maybe this applies to white folk. But I'll say this, in fact, I want to say this because some people might not know this. So once, a long time ago, I was a part of some sort of like kind of socialist thinking. Like I was kind of left leaning, but it was the ultra left, so I knew some socialists and all that kind of stuff, and they hated this particular brand of Marxism. And if you tell a white person, you got to just, like, if you find a white person who's a socialist, you just tell them this school of Marxism and they'll be turned off, So it's called Maoism, Third Worldism. You know, you gotta look it up. MTW, and Maoism, Third Worldism has a different premise from regular Marxism. So regular Marxism will tell you, oh, because like you know, I think it was Brother Bakari asked who was oppressed, right? And so in regular Marxism, the white proletariat is the oppressed group. You understand? So that the white worker right next to you is the so-called oppressed group, and that's why you
Right.
can't vibe with Marxists, you know, black Marxists, because what they're trying to convince you of, or what these white Marxists are trying to convince you of, is that these white folk, the regular white folk, the ones that do the lynchings, them are the oppressed group, and that's why even and Garvey was like, aren't the poor whites the ones doing all this shit? So those are the quote unquote oppressed people, right? And so what Maoism, Third Worldism postulated was that actually the global North are the are like the bourgeoisie, pretty much, and the global South are the proletariat. And so what the global South have to do is go against the global North. Now, obviously, I'm not really about, you know, global Southern, you know, whatever, which would, you know, include China and them, right? But that was also a little helpful for me to you know, to understand that, you know what, actually we have to focus on Africa, right, or the African diaspora, but we can't go into this, oh yeah, well, I want to look into like what Carl was saying, you know, the Southern American, or I want to look into the white American, or I want to look into, you know, because after you do all that, you know, you realize that everybody else, like if we're being realistic, everybody else is looking out for themselves while we are continually becoming the pawns of other people, and the pawns never win. You know, the pawns just die; they never win. And
Never.
and if we understand what happened with regard to the USSR was a really good country. It did help a lot of African liberation movements and all that kind of stuff, but they were not the pawns. You know what I mean? When you have all these proxy wars with America, they were not the pawns. And
Right.
so, you know, we just have to remember it, because people are going to make us pawns if we don't.
I think I got to everyone. A few people passed. Remember, this is a two-parter. So let me get to part B. So any thoughts you guys had? Gas has a good question for the capitalists here. I'm curious to hear what Buana has to say to that after this part B part. Someone is trying to get on, I guess, and I'm full. I'll get to you in a second. Wait, is Azuli here? Is Azuli here, or did he fall off? Let me take Azuli down because he's not responding. So whoever's trying to get on, try again, and you should be able to come on up. Part B of this prompt, should it please? Topic number 3 still. Part B is dialectical historical materialism valid within an African context? Should Garveyites adopt this? And in another perspective, does this clash with the African worldview? Forecast says he will step down. He can't stay too much longer. Forecast, I just want to thank you for coming through, man. All right, I appreciate you coming through, Forecast. So that's the part B. This came with a link as well. Let's see what it is. It's taking us to YouTube, it seems. Let's watch it, and then we'll discuss.
What is dialectical materialism? The term dialectical materialism was not actually used by either Marx or Engels, but came to mean Marxist philosophy in the 1930s, when texts such as Stalin's Dialectical and Historical Materialism, and the textbook of Marxist philosophy, prepared under the auspices of the Leningrad Institute of Philosophy, began to codify the enormous body of work produced by the founders of Marxism into a set of laws applying to both society and the natural world. The main sources are the later works of Engels, and especially Anti-Düring, and the posthumously published Dialectics of Nature. Lenin's manuscript notes on Hegel's Science of Logic, written in 1914, and first published in 1929, are also an important point of reference. Dialectical materialism, often abbreviated as diamat, asserts the primacy of matter over consciousness, and of the material conditions of existence over intellectual life. In particular, as adopted by the Soviet Communists as their official philosophy, dialectical materialism refers to the belief that political and historical events result from conflict of social forces, and are interpretable as a series of contradictions and their solutions. And this conflict is believed to be caused by materials needs. We can make sense of the term more meaningfully if we view it from the vantage point of Hegelian philosophy. As is well known, for Hegel, the movement of history is driven by reason, or mind. So, in Hegelian philosophy, there is the primary of consciousness, or reason, over matter. In his engagement with Hegel's philosophy, Marx argues that it is matter that drives history. Hence, in Marx, there is the primary of matter over consciousness. This is precisely the context of Marx's famous claim that he has turned Hegel on his head. Now, it must be noted that in dialectical materialism, change is asserted to be the outcome of a dialectic between contradictory elements at every level, from social revolution to alterations in the composition of matter itself. This process is governed by three laws, namely, 1. The law of the unity and conflict of opposites. 2. The law of the transition of quantity into quality, and 3. The law of negation. The law of the unity and conflict of opposites states that all phenomena consist of mutually contradictory elements, and that change is the result of their internal contradictions. The law of the transition of quantity into quality describes how quantitative changes always lead to qualitative change. The movement that unites atoms into molecules is an example of the transition from quantitative to qualitative change in the physical sciences, while the accumulation of capital that eventually destroys the social structures of feudalism illustrates the same process at the socio-historical level. The law of negation is derived mainly from the first volume of Marx's Capital. Here, every stage of the development of the private ownership of the means of production grows out of its predecessor, and negates it. It is then negated in its turn by the development of its internal contradictions. Viewed from this perspective, capitalism is said to have come into being by negating or destroying feudalism, and will in turn be negated by the rise of socialism and communism. In his influential essay on the materialist dialectic, Louis Althusser understands dialectical materialism as a theory of scientific practices, which transforms the ideological products of social practices into knowledges or scientific truths. Critics of orthodox Marxism point out that the attempt to transform dialectical materialism into a philosophy of nature, or even of the natural sciences, turns it into a form of positivism or scientism.
Yeah, so I guess clearly I kind of messed up there. I should have showed the tweet and played that video together and then have the discussion. So you guys can dissect dialectical or historical materialism a bit more, or you could speak to what they spoke about capitalism, especially since Gas had that question earlier that I'm sure you guys should remember. You guys could speak to what Gas was talking about. Is Jose still with us? Jose, if you're there, let me know. I know it's late where you are, so you might.
I'm here. I'm sorry. I was working on my Sukhoi 35E flanker.
Okay. So do you want to comment again on dialectical or historical materialism, or you could respond to what Gas was asking in his hypotheticals to the capitalists? What say you?
What's the hypothetical? Because Gas is in the chat, so I wasn't reading. I was in another screen.
Oh, okay. Gas was asking the question. I gotta try to go back. He said, "Ask the capitalists, would they use a public ambulance on a public road to a hospital subsidized with public funds if they are shot? Ask them why they allow their grandma to use Medicare." He had asked something similar before. Ask the capitalists why they ain't throw out their babies as soon as they were born, since those lazy breast guzzling babies non-productive. So I'm curious to hear what you guys have to comment to that in reference to the current part B of the prompt. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I have to agree with Guess. And earlier he said group economics is not an African concept. And yeah, that's true. Group economics is yet again another magic word. But yeah, capitalism is the society of the narcissist, right? You have to have personality issues to have yeah, I don't know, man. This subject, capitalism, socialism, etc. Rewind, let's rewind and name issues. Also in psychiatry, we need names. And government concepts. We also we need names. There's been some good points in the chat, and but I believe it's a bit difficult with all these words in our minds. It's difficult to I'm looking for words, I'm looking for Dutch words to translate, but the word treasury, like okay, let me try it with the word or with the description word treasury. We need our own word treasury, and I don't know. I'm as I speak, I'm thinking because there's so many different cultures among us in the diaspora and on the continent, so it's hard to have one single word treasury and naming concepts for everything. But maybe just let go of the Western spells of the Western languages and start anew. I don't know, but it's the magic of it's the magic of words that we're stuck with. We're always falling back in these concepts: capitalism, socialism, democracy, sexism, nuclear family. All these spells keep pulling us back to this matrix, and how do we indeed get back into our minds to start with a blank page, that's I don't know, man. That's where these conversations make me. This is where these conversations push me into. So I don't know. It may be off topic or I digress, but those are the thoughts that I have with these subjects in general.
I appreciate that, Jay. I appreciate that. And plus, you're up late here talking with us. It's getting late for us too, but you're up real late. So I appreciate it. I want to focus on the Garveyism part of the prompt. So, Bakari, should Garveyites adopt this historical materialism? And in another perspective, does this clash with an African worldview? What say you?
Hey, ask that question one more again.
Should Garveyites? So this little presentation that we watched just now, talking about historical materialism, should Garveyites adopt this? And also, I guess a part B to this question is, does this clash with an African worldview? This materialism idea.
Does materialism clash with an African worldview? I'm not sure materialism clash with an African worldview, because you can go back and, like, a lot of the stuff we do now, you see us here now, and you talk about the jewelry and stuff that we wear, that would be considered materialism, right? But you can go back and you can see what African kings and queens, was painted with gold to up to their elbows and all around their neck. We have always been a little flashy, but I don't agree with materialism. I think that's bad, because, and the reason it's bad, because you show people what you have, and that's why people will come and get it and come and take it because everybody know what you have. But when you speak on what Garveyism should adopt, no, I don't. I'm not sure Garveyism should adopt that. Is there some things in Garveyism that could be updated? Yes, maybe. But the economic plan that was laid out by the UNIA and coined as Garveyism, when business owned by the UNIA, they did profit sharing. Even the independent owned businesses, the UNIA got majority of the money because it needed to build certain things for Black people. I'm gonna make sure I say this so people can understand. For the oppressed Black people, we weren't concerned about them other oppressed people. But anyway, that's what the UNIA did, and they were able to feed people from their own dime. They had UNIA had over 1,000 businesses from poor Black people coming together, working, putting their money together, and doing for themselves. So not only was it a great economic plan, it shows the resiliency of Black people, and it showed what Black people could do if we decide to come together and work together as a people, and not continue to follow other people ideas as if other people is just automatically smarter than anything Black people has ever done and has ever created, because it's a time limit on whatever we have. And that's one of my biggest problems with all this so-called socialism and everything else. We ignore our ancestors, our greatness. We ignore what Marcus Garvey and the UN, because he was the leader. We ignore what the UNIA did and what it did for our people, and don't even want to study that economic plan. The economic plan worked, and I think that's, for me, that's the economic plan. That's the strategy that Black people should use, especially over here in this part of the world where we are right now. They're not going to be no socialist government over here. So we need to just, and that's my take on it.
I appreciate that,
My
Bakari.
son want to speak when he can. Let him know when he get a chance to speak.
Yeah. I'm going to get to him in a second because I saw Kibwe was trying to join earlier. I guess one of the things too, in a sense, the way to look at this is the question of, is African history and the things that have happened to us up till now, which is a part of history too, is what happened to us in history, is it because of our, did it happen because of our material conditions outweighed our ideals, or is it the opposite to that? And I think that question omits the fact that we had an imposition in our history. Like, we had a physical imposition. We had an enemy of our folks who came in and disrupted our history. And it's not really about the material, or it's not really about the ideals per se. It was about their ideals, not ours. So I think that's one way to look at it. Let me mix it up a little bit, because I know Buana been waiting for a minute. Buana, what say you? You could speak to what Gas was talking about. Those
I will. But let me answer, because I want Tari on this question too long. But let me answer the first thing. In terms of Garveyism, Oni brought up a brilliant thing that I actually forgot about in terms of communism, or whatever, Marxism, whatever y'all guys want to relabel it as. He said that Garvey said that in the South, the white so-called proletariat was lynching Black people in the South. So if you were to empower these people, put them in governmental office and give them power, why wouldn't you think that they would further, do things to ensure that these people never get their so-called reigns of the modes of production and things like that. They would never ever be empowered because their racism outweighed their political philosophy and economic philosophy. It's all in there. It's all in there. So imagine giving these people power, or the reins of power, or the reins of the modes of production. You know, there would still be a difficulty because they will still not see you as their brothers. And in terms of what Gas was saying, see, these things have real world consequences. And what I mean by that is because he mentioned the ambulatory service, he mentioned the roads and things of that nature. My sister, my home girl right now is in England. She had to take the ambulance because she suffers from sickle cells. So she had to take the public ambulance and go to the public hospital, right? Now, if she is in a situation where, you know, she could afford privatized medicine, she wouldn't have to necessarily wait as long to get this treatment, the services that she would need, because in these so-called socialized hospitals, they are flooded with people all the time, all the time. So the people who really need the services, you know, because there are so many people, these places are congested. You know what I mean? The time it would take for her to get that personal service that she would need is restricted. If she was in a privatized hospital, that might not necessarily be the case. Also, let me also say this. I think that my Marxist brethren should be thanking people like me, even though they call us pigs and things of that nature, because we pay more taxes. We usually pay more taxes to pay for the public services that our Marxist brethren benefit from. More so, because if it was a flat tax, then all of us would be paying the same thing. But because we live in a system where they say, okay, y'all make more, so y'all have to pay more. Therefore, more of our money is going to go towards essential services, the building of roads, the ambulatory services, all these things, the hospitals. They dig deeper in the so-called capitalist pockets because they feel like since y'all make more money, or however y'all say y'all make more money, since y'all make money, y'all need to be paying more taxes. In a fair arrangement, it would be a flat tax, so everyone would pay the same thing. Everyone would pay the same thing. This is what y'all suggesting. Everyone would pay the same thing. And if everyone is paying the same thing, I wouldn't mind doing what I'm doing. But because I consider it to be unfair, why? Because I make more money, I have to pay more for the services of the society when everybody is contributing on the same level. You know what I mean? But needless to say, I am not against essential services. Essential services are needed. Public services are needed. In terms of the elderly, my grandmother receiving treatment and things like that. Well, this is what I said before. The older people in our society would have worked. They would have worked and they would have contributed to society. I believe that they should be taken care of. And I'm not against that. I said the elderly people and our most vulnerable people, the younger people, people who are mentally deranged, of course they need to be taken care of. People who are disabled, of course they need to be taken care of. But strong, strapping men who could go out every day and work and refuse to, I have a guttural reaction towards that kind of idea. You know what I mean? Where I have to dig in my pockets and take care of these people as well. Why would I have to when they could do just the same as I can? You know, so this is my sentiment in terms of answering the question and answering the whole Marxist business. But I'm starting to feel like Che Guevara, man. I mean, it's like, man, I hope we get past this problem soon. But I'll stop there.
Gas him up out there, throwing his bobs. He says the capitalists are dodging the question on babies and breastfeeding. Throw out the call me breast guzzlers. Grandma shut off her Medicare. I know we got Kibwe waiting. I'm glad to see Nama X and Trigger Happy and everyone having robust conversation out there. Let's get to Kibwe and then Oni. All right, Kibwe, then Oni.
Yeah, hello. How y'all doing?
Sir. Yeah, man, we good. How are you this week?
I'm doing good.
Good.
So,
good.
My ideas about historical material. I'm gonna keep it short about historical materialism. Historical materialism is really just a view on history, like a historical theory that basically a society's government and religion and common social beliefs will be based on their economic growth. Well, we will be based on their mode of production. So basically how their economy functions. An example of this would be in America during slavery, the government obviously protected their right to own slavery. Religious beliefs obviously reflected that slavery was God's will for Black people. So generally, I think historical materialism, I think that view is pretty accurate in most cases. I don't really think it goes against any African principles. I don't see why that wouldn't be I don't see why that view on history would be against African principles, that their government, the way their government functioned, reflected how their economy operated. But what I want to respond to is what the brother who just went before me spoke. I couldn't remember his name. And when he, the larger question, should Garveyites adopt historical materialism? I don't really think they should adopt historical materialism, but I do think they should adopt socialism, because socialism is just, when he talks about the socialists or the communists want everybody to pay the same flat tax rate, I don't know what socialist believes that. In fact, socialists believe that like people with millions and billions of dollars, we should tax like 80 or 90% of their income, and that poor people really shouldn't pay much in taxes at all. But larger than that, socialists don't believe in a system that allows billionaires to exist. Socialism is just organizing your economy in a way where the means of production, so the equipment that's used to produce things. So for example, in a restaurant, the grill, the refrigerator, the utensils to cook, these would all be the building within itself to serve people. These things would be collectively owned by the workers, and the profits that are made from their labor will be democratically controlled. That's really all socialism is. It's organizing your economy in a way where the means of production are publicly owned instead of privately owned. And I think the number one reason that Garvey should endorse this, I think that I'm not gonna lie. Of course, I respect Marcus Garvey's work, and I love Marcus Garvey. He did a lot of great work. I would never try to disavow or denounce Marcus Garvey, but I think there's a little bit of contradiction when we talk about group economics, but they're only meant to profit the private owners. Because how capitalism works is the means of production I just described are privately owned by one person. And that one person, whether or not they contribute anything, gets to tell the workers what to do and determines their wage. And they're going to set their wage at a level where they can get surplus value from their work. So sticking with the restaurant example, the restaurant owner would set the waitresses and the chefs. Let's just say, for example, he'll set their wage at $10 an hour. Well, he's hoping that the workers produce $25 an hour. And the extra money that they produce, the profits would go to him, and he can determine what to do with them for himself. I don't really see how this arrangement is for the benefit of the community or the group at large. For one person who doesn't have to contribute anything, truthfully, to be able to control and determine and have access to the wealth that the workers produce is not in benefit of the group. Now, I can definitely acknowledge that Marcus Garvey was not some cold, hard capitalist, didn't believe in workers' rights, didn't believe in profit sharing. A lot of the profits from the private companies that were under the UNIA did go towards benefiting the community. But I still think that this structure is authoritarian because one person gets to decide for everybody else, and that person is not accountable to the workers. And number two, I don't think it's fair for a business owner who contributes whatever they want to contribute, usually nothing. The goal of owning a business, even all of these black capitalists will tell you, is to have a passive income. So their goal, most business owners' goal is to contribute nothing. So I don't think that somebody in that position should be able to profit off of the labor of the workers. I mean, if the owner of a restaurant doesn't come to work, sticking with that example, nobody notices, nobody cares. But if all of the workers don't show up, your restaurant closes down. And I think that the people who make businesses functional, who make them operational, I think they should control their workplace, and I think they should control the profits that they collectively produce. So that is my argument. That is what I would submit as to why Garveyites should adopt socialism. When you talk about Marxism, that's like a strict adherence to Marxist theory. I don't really have that. I don't really read Marxism. Socialism is so much larger than Karl Marx. That's why I don't really like the label Marxism. Communism is a more abstract idea of society where money wouldn't exist and class wouldn't exist at all. We're probably at least 1,000 years away from that, so I don't like that. I don't really call myself a communist either. I guess I would agree with it in an abstract way, but I think socialism that more accurately describes what I think Black people should strive towards, including Garveyites.
Okay, well, I like your contribution there. I'm sure Mr. Untouchable is absolutely in love with you now.
No. I have a question for Keyway. Like I say, well, his hands off him with him. But the only question I have is, how many people went to jail with Garvey and when he was so-called accused of committing fraud? Was it him or who? How many people went to jail with him? How many UNI members went to jail with him?
I don't know how many went to jail with him. I just know that Marcus Garvey got arrested for, what was it, like maybe a few years and then got deported. So I don't know how many actually went to jail with him.
Okay, so let me go to my point. My point is that even though Marcus Garvey had 6 million members, and many people who worked in his factories and things like that nature, when it was time to go to jail, it was him, and I think one other one of his members went to jail with him. My point being is, he paid a cost to be the boss. He took. People may say that Marcus Garvey was in a one-man organization, but at the end of the day, the government attacked him. Because ultimately it was him who was taking the greatest risk. He was the face out there. He was the organizer of the actual UNIA. So ultimately, the responsibility of who taking the weight, it fell to that one particular gentleman, not the 6 million members. So in terms of when you talk about workers and organization and things of that nature, you may say that the CEO doesn't do anything, but when you think about it, the CEO or the person who created the institution itself, he came up with the idea. He provided in terms of the idea and the value for the company, and it took a whole lot of thought to arrange and organize all the coming together, all the people to provide the profits that company would have saw. So who else would supposed to reap the most reward from it, as rather than the person who coming up with the idea itself? The idea was created by him. Granted, you could say that the laborers was actually able to make the idea to come to fruition, and that's a granted, and that's a credible point. But I don't think that they should. I personally don't think that they should be made more or take control of someone else's idea and say, well, we demand you pay us this particular amount of money for the services that we provide to you. If that is the case, I would just, try to get workers from somewhere else and teach them what my ideas is, and how to make my company profitable. And then I'll read the reward from that. I think the person who comes up with ideas, people think it's the physical labor that create the world. I don't think that way. I think that really this world is created through thought, through ideas. Thinking is the hardest labor that I believe sometimes in the world. Thinking, not necessarily the physical building of the building itself, but really conceiving the idea, putting it to paper, constructing it, and organizing people how to go about creating this building. That's why I say it was Marcus. Ultimately, it was Marcus Garvey the government went to. It wasn't his numbers. But I'll stop there, brother. I'll let you rock.
So I just think the issue is, what you're describing is exploitative. You're saying that this person comes up with an idea. They don't have to contribute anything to bringing the idea to life. They just reap the benefits from all of the people who did bring it to life. I mean, Amazon, the idea is worth $0.00, but Amazon, the corporation, which takes millions of people to operate, is the most valuable company in the world. So I think this idea that you're spreading that the physical labor isn't what creates the value. If that wasn't the case, then business owners wouldn't hire employees because it wouldn't be profitable to do so. The only reason that business owners hire employees is so that their idea can come to life and they can get the surplus value from the employees. This capitalist narrative that,
wait, you mind if I interject?
Let me finish. This capitalist idea that business owners are just these, just God's gift to the earth. They bring these great ideas and they deserve to reap the benefit of other people's labor. I mean, let's just be honest. Don't you think it's pretty convenient that business owners are the ones who push this narrative that business owners are just the most benevolent people on the earth? I mean, and listen, if you don't think the physical labor is what brings the value, this is what we can do. I would tell all of the workers, do not go to work, and we'll see how much money your idea is worth.
Yeah, let me.
Only quickly, as you answer, I'd like you to also address Trigger Happy's comment. He thinks we not really defining what a nation state really is. We might be conflating a quote unquote nation with nation states. Those are two different things. So give your response, but also include a response to that for me, please.
Oh, the Trigger. Well, I'll have to see what Trigger's talking about. But what I just want to keep way to get. I mean, because what happened was, sorry. So Buana kind of neglected to say the main thing that the quote unquote business owner contributes to the business. So it's not the idea that the business owner contributes; it's the capital. And so. Without the capital, there is no labor.
That's
yeah, exactly. I think that's so. Like, if you just say, "Oh, well, how good is your idea?" That's not it. It's really the capital. So the example I would give Brother Keyway. So I'll think about what Trigger says, but the example I give Brother Keyway is this, right? Let's say Keyway is like the laborer, and I'm the bourgeoisie. All right. So as the bourgeoisie, I go to Keyway and I say, "Look, I want you to sell some lemonade, right? I'll give you the lemons, right? I'll give you the lemonade stand. I'll advertise your stand, right? I'll do everything so that you get customers and you have all the products. All you have to do is squeeze the lemons like I tell you to and sell the lemons, right? But I'm going to buy the lemons. I'm going to buy the advertising. It's going to cost me, right? Let's say, lemonade stand is not that expensive. Let's say it's cost me $5,000. Cost Keyway nothing. Okay? And I say, I'll pay you, Keyway, $20 an hour to run this stand, right? And yes, I do expect you to sell $50 an hour, sure. But I'll give you $20 an hour, right? I'm asking Keyway, is this a good deal for him or me? Or should it be that I get nothing for putting in the $5,000?
Yeah. So but I want to answer your hypothetical. But before I do, I just don't like this idea that business owners are hiring employees out of the goodness of their heart. Business owners hire employees at $10 an hour, $15 an hour, whatever, hoping that they make double or triple that. And the excess that their employees produce will all go to them. Business owners hire employees so that business owners can make money, not to the community. So, so to answer your question, is this a good deal for me? No, it's not. Because at the end of the day, if I don't sit out there in the hot sun, squeezing these lemons the way you told me to, then no lemonade gets made. And I mean, the point and this idea that, oh, well, capitalists put up the capital for businesses, so they deserve complete ownership and authoritarian control over the workers. The only reason that they put up the capital is so that they don't have to contribute. Because I mean, that's not labor.
So they could make more money, bro.
You can put up all the capital you want. You, like you saying, you paying for the lemons, pay for the advertisement. You can pay for a transportation for me to move the stand wherever you want me to move it in the city. But at the end of the day, if I don't squeeze the lemons and I don't sit out in the sun and I don't sell the lemons, ain't nobody, everybody gonna be.
Don't take the job.
Labor. Let me finish.
Don't take the job.
I didn't interrupt you. Just let me finish. Now, you're saying don't take the job. Well, unfortunately, in the United States, if you don't take the job, you're bound to sleeping on the streets in a tent or in your car or eating out of the trash or not having access to health care or being exposed to the elements. So this idea, well, if you don't like it, you can just not take the job. The people who don't take the job, quote unquote, people walk past them and spit on them and the police come tear up their tents and we call them bums. So let's stop playing like, because everybody says this, if you don't like capitalism, just don't go to work. This idea is ridiculous. If any child asks their parents, mommy, why do you go to work? Everybody knows the answer is because you have to. Isn't this why you tell your children, don't be in a rush to grow up because you have responsibilities? But when we have a conversation about how capitalism is exploitative, now we want to play this game like you don't have to go to work. You have to go to work. And no, it's not a good deal, because I'm not getting properly compensated for my labor in this lemonade stand hypothetical. I'm doing your bidding at a rate that you set and following rules that you set, and you're not accountable to me, or else I'll starve. So no, it's not a good deal, to answer your question.
Who is taking the financial risk?
Yeah, exactly. Wait, let me say this. Let me say this, Bwana. I just want to say this quickly.
When I walk out on the street in a lemonade stand, I ain't taking the physical risk.
Wait, hold on a second.
I'm not getting sunburned. I'm taking the physical risk. When I'm squeezing those lemons for 40 hours a week, 60 hours overtime, and who's taking the risk of arthritis? This idea that workers don't take
by your hands, man.
It's crazy. You know what? You know what capitalists risk? Capitalists risk going broke and having to work a job. Workers go to these jobs and risk their life. Workers die on the job all of the time. And these capitalists you claim are taking a risk are the ones who fight not to pay their families, not to compensate them for their injuries. Capitalists are risking becoming workers. Workers are risking becoming injured or dead.
Okay, but my question is this. Wait, let me say this. Let me ask you this. You say that if you don't take the job, then you're going to be living on the streets and whatnot, right? So where are you supposed to be if you're not taking a job? Like, where are you supposed to be living exactly if you're not taking a job? Like, are you supposed to be living in the mansion? Are you supposed to be living in the White House? Where should you be living if you're not taking the job?
Right. So what you're doing is you're making the conversation absurd. What you're doing is asking questions that you know are ridiculous, hoping that I give you a ridiculous answer. Obviously, I don't think people who don't work should live in a mansion or in the White House, but I do think housing is a human right. I do think no matter what your financial situation is, people don't deserve to sleep on the streets and eat out the trash or have to sleep in the car with their children. So you asking me where do I think the people who don't work stay? I think they should stay in socialized, decommodified housing units that are safe, that are safe and accessible to wherever they need to go. That's what I think. I don't think they should live in a penthouse suite. Like the capitalists, who don't contribute, paid for by society. Paid for by society. The same way. No. Because Jeff Bezos' penthouse suite is paid for by the workers. So you don't have a problem with it when you have an opportunity to benefit. But when the people who are forgotten about, the people who sleep on the streets, you don't want them to get nothing, but you're defending a system where the workers pay for Jeff Bezos to fly into space for 15 minutes.
Wait, quick question for the chat. This is Kibwe who's speaking. And Oni, I'll give you and Bon a chance to respond, but we have some other people on the panel who need to give their first thoughts. I want to know from you guys in the chat, how old do you think Kibwe is? That's Brother Bakari's son. How old do you think he is, based on how he comports himself? Oni and then Bakari, go ahead.
Oh, well, no, all right. I was just saying. I mean, look, I think I don't want to underestimate this idea of like how much capital does, because I could say, Juana says I get the right women or whatever, but some women, she flatter me and all that kind of stuff. Somehow or another, I ended up, let's say buying a bar for her, but I don't see any profit from it. I mean, it's not too expensive a bar. I don't see any profit from it, and I get that in some African societies, some African cultures, just helping other people, just for the sake of helping other people, is in and of itself a good thing. In some African cultures, just giving money, and just getting back as much as you gave, or just a little bit more than you gave, is good enough. But in a sense. And I think this is just, this is separate from the conversation with Kibwe, really. But in a sense, one of the things that I noticed about that mindset while I was in Africa was that you're not going to get rich that way, And if you never get rich, you might not be able to go fly in space for 15 minutes, And as much as that may sound good, like how, Kibwe said, hey, why the freak does this guy get to fly in space for 15 minutes? As much as that may sound good, really, it's not good for us to not want to fly in space for 15 minutes. It might seem like a waste for one individual to get that opportunity, but so much technology, so much science, so much innovation comes from that. And if we just say, you know what, all we're going to do is just provide for everybody's bare minimum, and if anybody exceeds over that, take it away, and so on and so forth. That's fine, but like realistically, there's also the reality that actually a lot of, and I'm not saying that China and them and Russia are not innovative countries, right? But there's a lot of innovation that comes from this private enterprise. It comes from this private competition. It comes from, Best Buy dominating over Circuit City or what have you. It comes from this. And I personally would not go by the rationale that if I am if I tell an individual, hey, look, I'll pay you a good wage to do this, and sure, you're gonna profit me, but ultimately you're going to get a good wage from this, right? And not to say that every bourgeoisie says this, not every individual says the same thing. Not every version of love is the same for every other people. But what I'm saying is that I'm not going to say that the person who puts their money on the line, right? Like even in the example, I want to just clarify, even in the example of Jeff Bezos, when you look at Amazon for the first 3-4 years of its existence, it was costing him money. Eventually he becomes this rich guy off of it. But originally he's like selling books online, kind of like me, right? But he's selling books online and it's costing him money, And of course he already has money, and you can always go into the origin of where does that money come from and root it out that way. But realistically, if I say, look, I'm going to put like for instance with this bar in Africa, the lady doesn't have to manage it good or manage it bad, because if she loses all the money, right? It wasn't her money, whereas if she gains all the money, she's the only one that gains. If it were a difference where I said, hey, look, I'm renting this bar to you and you have to pay me so that I can get my money back at least, that is different. But in the circumstance where we go into this, kind of just get free money kind of thing, right? Get free money, get free business and all that kind of stuff. The reality is that if somebody does not have to, if somebody is not sacrificing it, somebody's not losing anything, they don't have any personal stake in it, and it doesn't need to succeed. When Jeff Bezos has this Amazon and his books are not selling and all that kind of stuff, he's losing money and he's struggling to make sure it succeeds because it's his damn money, you know? Whereas I don't have to look out for a success. The people working in Amazon before him don't have to look out for a success, because if they get fired, they just get a new job. There's a lot to it. It's a very complicated. But that's all I would. Wait, sorry. Narmai says costing him what? He ain't working. He just throwing credit to sell books. Yeah. But that's money. You know what I mean? If I have, like, because the thing is this, the thing about people about capitalists is that they already have money. You know, like for instance,
So what are they risking? So what are they risking? If they already rich and risk some money that's insignificant to them, what are they risking? Because the people at
the money's not insignificant to them.
The people whose contributions you're trying to minimize, the people who are working 40,
brother, 50, I thought you said we're not interrupting each other.
The people who work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, we know what they're risking.
So look, when somebody says don't interrupt me, then I just stop interrupting them, and then I don't expect them to interrupt me after, you know? But as far as what are they risking? Yeah, no, you still risk your money. You know, like you still risk your money. You might say, because the thing is that you would have had that money. The whole point of going into business is to make more money than you already had. Not to say that you don't, like, so if I have $1 million, right? It's $1 million, right? Now, all right, let's say I have $1 million. And I'm like, yo, you know, I could get by with 200,000 or whatever, right? And then I put $800,000 down. I just lost $800,000. You know, if I buy whatever I'm buying, I lost $800,000. My goal of losing $800,000 is not to be down $800,000. It is to get more. Yeah, exactly. It's to get $2 million or something. And if I don't make that $2 million, then I just took an L. And a lot of people take that L. You know?
Let's hear from Juana briefly, and then I got to get to Tan and Carl on them. They haven't responded at all. So go ahead.
No, I with the discussion, I know I'm talking to a brother, a younger brother, and I'm hands off of the brother. He see the world how he perceives the world. I see it like how I see it. And we are where we are. In terms, I don't know what Gas's question was. I think he was talking about babies and stuff. But I already done said, Gas, in terms of our most vulnerable people, I said children, babies are included in that. And I said that the elderly, these people should be taken care of and provided for. You know what I mean? But in terms of people who are able to think, you know what I mean? I think that they should contribute to the society that we exist and have to live in. And I'll leave it there.
All right, let's go to Tanzan. Tanzan, you've been waiting quietly. What say you? Is Tanzan still there?
Okay, yes, I am. Yes, yes, I'm listening. So, you know, I was saying about earlier about language and the difficulty it is to translate things into, you know, meaning into action, because one can have the best ideas in the world and yet the action is completely different from what it is. So, you know, and that's why I was saying, you know, trying to define the indefinable, because sometimes we just look at things, you know, as one way or another. And I was talking about that was also, you know, Wittgenstein's, you know, and also people, or you know, they give too much credit to this dialectical materialism and all that stuff, and it's not as if, you know, Hegel, you know, made his own point on that. I think that's just the easiest way, but for him it was really, you know, that it was a self, you know, it was a loop, it was a self-contradictory loop, that you cannot just go on and on the same thing, and then people, you know, they just jumped on that, and then they took it on, and they didn't understand where he was going with it. But his idea was more on the, you know, on the consciousness, the spiritual, and, you know, the social level of things, that, you know, it's not just about materialism. That's just one aspect where something replaces another, on and on, but it was not an inevitable, you know, conclusion. Whereas, you know, with Marx, Engels, and the rest of them, they looked at it as if it was, you know, scientific, as if it was inevitable. But in any way, so the question was, and the other thing about it is also that he also assumed the basic ideas of labor and value. I think the difference between him and the other, maybe the capitalists, is like, he said that, labor had some value, but he maybe have downplayed the effect of capital over labor. But I won't go too much into it. Basically, it's what were the three questions? The first one was what kills you, the gun, the bullet, manufacturing. So it's a whole process from, how you die, from how, you got to die. It's a whole process of different things that goes from somebody, actually putting all those things together to somebody actually having, those things in their hand. So it's quite it's not easy to put it on one thing or another. I would say the other thing was that for me, Baudrillard also talked about this thing about the the universalization. So universalization is when things are just made to be, one way or another. You're given some choices, but those choices are not really choices. It's a more of a standardization of things. So even when you come to both ideas of capitalism and socialism, they agree on the basic foundation, but they differ on how you achieve it. So I agree about the idea of labor to some extent, but inside, but they differ on how to achieve it. For me, I think that you should start with what you want to do first, and then the strategies for doing it afterwards. And unfortunately, we're still in the system where we only are given limited choices. And so I put the I don't have time enough to talk about it, but Baudrillard, the violence of the global, he talks about this universalization when you're faced with, one aspect or another, and you almost seem to think that those are the only, aspects of it. And then the last thing I'll say is this also, that people's ideas are often, misinterpreted by their followers. And so, you find, the anti-Semites were very much for Nietzsche, but he was not for them. And then you find that a lot of Marxists rely on Hegelian dialectical materialism, but that was simply one step of what he was talking about. It was amongst many steps. And then also, when guys talk about, the last materialism, it's the same thing that Nietzsche said with, the first Christian died on the cross. What was the quote that he said? In truth, there was only one Christian, and he died on the cross. So sometimes people's ideas and their practice becomes different. And that's why for us Africans, sometimes we mistake the practice and the idea, because you can find many aspects of what you're looking for in terms of, capitalism, communism, socialism, and all that. You can find all aspects of it, but you will not find, a codified, rule books of how you're supposed to do this one thing or the other, and this dogmatic aspect and inevitability of it. So I think that we practice something first, and then we made the rules about it. But on the other hand, some people create the idea first, and then they work, towards it. So it's like creating reality versus, looking at reality and then creating laws from that. So yeah, I'll end there.
Thank you for that, Tanzan. Let's have from Carl. Carl, what say you?
So a lot of stuff here. I want to answer Gas's question about why don't capitalists throw out their babies? Because they need someone to work. So even though those babies may be, might not be productive then, but they're going to need someone to work. So that's why they don't do that. As far as the other question he mentioned about, I'm looking at the chat right now, about using, public transportation, other things paid for by society. I would look at what's her name, Ayn Rand. She was a laissez-faire capitalist, and into her life, she got Social Security. and she didn't even believe in getting Social Security. She just kind of she's a hypocrite. There's an idea, there's socialism for the rich and rugged individualism for the rest of us. As far as looking at the question about whether or not historical and dialectical materialism can be used for Garveyism, I think that it can. And looking at from dialectical materialism being the political and historical events that result, they result from the conflict of social forces. What does Marx says that all of history can be interpreted through class conflict. I don't necessarily agree with that, but these conflicts are caused by people's material need, the need for food, shelter, clothing. So you can kind of analyze, history through the lens of materialism and see how that causes change. People need to. You could even look at things like colonialism through a materialist lens. They wanted resources. They needed raw materials for the metropole. That's what was Columbus on the Nina, the Pinta Santa Maria for? He was on his way to look for a way to India. Why? Because they needed wealth. Spain was recently defeated the Moors. They needed money. So he hopped on the ship looking for a way to India. The eastern way, the Silk Road, was closed. He's looking for a new way. So you have a material need, which is pushing exploitation. So looking at it through a dialectical material lens, I can certainly understand that. So I can see the benefit of it. I think it would benefit, like Keyboy was saying, he was cooking earlier because he was really bringing up a very, very good points. And I see many times how capitalist indoctrination affects us, because everybody in a capitalist society, everybody thinks they're just temporarily depressed millionaires. And in reality, you're more than likely going to die in the class that you're born in. So it works better to elevate within your class than it does to try to, leave your class. That's most people, that's not going to happen for them. So it does work in the sense of that, we can look at history through a material lens, but African people, we don't have the same history as Europeans. We don't have the same experiences that Europeans have. So, we have to take our own personal history and use that and view society and come up with our own conclusions through our own lens. I don't want to be so dogmatic in that we have to use Garvey, we have to use Marx. I'm sorry, we have to use this. And but Marx was talking about Europe. Marx was talking about England. He was talking about Germany. So we still have to take our own personal history into account and live that way. So does it matter if we use historical? I think it does. I think it does have value. But yeah, I don't think that we can. Marx wasn't God. He had his own fault. He messed up and he made mistakes. For some reason, he never predicted that capitalism could adapt to include the workers and almost brainwash them. Capitalist propaganda is so prevalent in our society that again, we empathize more with the capitalists than we do with the workers, even though 99% of us are workers. So much of the development that we create comes from groupthink. For example, Thomas Edison made, we talk about how he invented the light bulb. Thomas Edison did not invent the damn light bulb. He had a bunch of people working together on the light bulb, and he took the credit for it. Same thing with Elon Musk. He takes the credit for things like Tesla and SpaceX, and he has people working together communally, and then he takes advantage of it. The internet was created by a group of people. It was, once the internet started becoming profitable, you had these companies come in and try to take control of it. That's what capitalism does. It does not create wealth. Capitalism concentrates wealth into the hands of a few people. So that's just my thoughts on that, and I'll leave it.
I appreciate.
And I would like to expand on that if I can.
You guys gotta wait. I have someone who's been waiting here for a minute now.
Oh, my bad.
Let's welcome in Ben Uko. to the panel. Ben, this is your first time here. How are you, and have you been following the conversation? Actually, this is not your first time. It's like your second time. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm good. Ben, what's your thoughts on the current conversation?
My thoughts are just when we're dealing with capitalism, socialism, communism, these are all created by the elites. The elites created these concepts. That's what we have to understand. So yeah, so it's very interesting to hear different perspectives of what we need, and so because we got here
it sounds like you're enjoying a cold snack there or something. Two things. Pick up the pace a little bit and mute your YouTube because it's causing the feedback when I speak.
All right.
All right, Ben, go ahead.
Okay, like I was just saying that you have there's different philosophies that they have. You have democratic socialism, you have socialist, you have there's a whole different things, like different types of communism. But what people have to understand is who created all of this? Who was the real creators? And what's their benefits? What was their pros and cons of it? That's what we have to understand. So there's lots of things that we're going to need to understand about knowing what has to be done with these concepts. So I'm just like to hear a little bit more on it and see how everything is going on it, and then I'll continue to talk. Okay.
All right. Thank you for that.
So can I speak on? Can I speak or?
1 second.
Okay,
in the chat, Afro Native World says, "Why do we spend so much time on Marx instead of re-Africanization, relearning indigenous African traditions and worldview? It takes a lot of time and huge distraction." So these were posted by Trigger Happy, to be honest, and this seems to be, something that he's interested in, and he's contributing topics. So I'm gonna oblige and post the topics. In fact, the next topic was supposed to be more Marxism, but I changed it to something a little lighter. What I would suggest, again, join the Discord and get your get your role, and you can post in the Shoot the Breeze topics area, and we can do re-Africanization. We can smoothen this out a little bit more. So do that for me, and then we'll be fine. Kibwe, and then short. Keep it short now because we're ending at 2. And we're still on topic number 3. So you got to keep it short for us, because I want to move on to Shoot Breeze topic number 4. The Marxism conversation is starting to drag now. So Kibwe, and then whoever else wants to contribute after.
Well, Kibwe is gone. I just wanted to
No,
ask.
no, I'm right here. I ain't going nowhere.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
We here, we there, we everywhere. But I just want to respond to Afro Native World, and I want to touch on what my socialist brother said. And why do we spend so much time on Marx? Truthfully, I've never read Karl Marx. I understand, his basic critiques of capitalism from just doing my own research about what socialism is. But socialism is so much more than Karl Marx. So that's why I don't call myself a Marxist or any of that. Socialism is not about Karl Marx. Just to answer why we have to talk about Karl Marx, we're talking about when I say we need to be dogmatic, when I disagree with the brother who said we shouldn't be dogmatic, we do need to be dogmatic, not about Karl Marx. We need to be dogmatic against exploitation. We need to be dogmatic against the concentration of wealth. We need to be dogmatic about being against private ownership of capital. The private ownership of capital, capitalism, racial capitalism is the source of Black people's oppression. Capitalism, private ownership is Black people's oppression. Wealth inequality is Black people's oppression. And if we're going to be dogmatic against that, we have to be dogmatic about socialism, because that's organizing our economy in a way that does not reward exploitation. And Black exploitation has been the history, not just of America, but has been the history of the entire Western Hemisphere, truthfully. And unfortunately, has been something that Black people have been going through for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So this idea that, well, capitalism and socialism, they're both equally bad, we need to fall somewhere in the middle. No, we need to be dogmatic against private ownership and exploitation and greed. We need to be dogmatic about guaranteeing our people human rights like housing and education and universal health care. We do need to be dogmatic about those things. And that is what socialism is about. It's not about just Karl Marx. And I think that conversation can never dry up, in my opinion.
No, it's a conversation that you could expand on all day. I agree. But for shoot the breeze, we try to keep we try to keep it snappy. So that's why I'm saying I think it's a little bit, bogging it down, especially the fact that we have some capitalist pigs about the place here.
No, we of course can move topics. I'm not saying we need to stay on this topic forever, but this idea that socialism is just about Karl Marx, I reject that. Socialism is really about us. That's what it is. Socialism is about what's best for our society. Capitalism is what's best for capitalists. And I think until we do need to be dogmatic about that.
Okay, so Bakari next, and then whoever else wants to add their short last words to this one.
Only thing I want to say is these socialists, they confuse Garveyism with capitalism, and most of them haven't even studied Garveyism. That's why they continue to talk about rich people like Bezos and other billionaire white folks who got their money off slavery. When I talk about Garveyism, we talk about how poor black people, not all poor folk, poor black people came together over here in this country, being oppressed, and created something and did for their people. So I asked them, stop comparing when we say Garveyism to damn capitalism with people like Jeff Bezos, in any of these other filthy rich white folks. You got to compare what poor black folks did. So when we compare what poor black people did, this is what I'm going to ask the Rainbow Coalition. That's what I call the socialists, because we live over here. We don't live anywhere. We live in this country. What did the socialists in this country, the Rainbow Coalition, what did they do for black people better than Garvey, better than the UNIA?
Not a damn thing.
That's false. That is false. Not a damn thing. That's false. Come on now. Are we really going to disrespect the Black Panthers? We're going to disrespect Fred Hampton. We're going to disrespect Shirley Chisholm. We're going to disrespect Kwame Ture and say they didn't do. We're going to disrespect the MOVE movement. We're going to disrespect Assata Shakur and say they didn't do a damn thing for black people. To respond to my father's question, socialism is a much more long-term project. And like I said, I would never deny the things that Garvey did, but a lot of the things he did are things that I'm in line with. Guaranteeing healthcare as a human right, I don't have a problem with you guaranteeing with the Black Cross nurses giving healthcare to black people. I don't have a problem with the UNIA securing food and housing for black people. Those are socialist principles. So obviously, I'm 100% in favor of that. And Marcus Garvey did great work in that way. But I think we need to address this idea that because a business is black owned or small, that it cannot be exploitative. Even if we take a business locally here, in Atlanta, Phenomenal Seafood, is owned by one person who does work there. I would never deny his contributions. He's in there cooking, he's in there fixing drinks, he's in there serving people along with the rest of the workers. So why does he deserve to get the surplus value they create as well? I mean, if the owner is functionally just going to be a worker, why do they deserve to control all the rules? Why do they deserve the surplus value and deserve to set the other workers' wages? That's the exploitation I'm talking about.
Here's what you gotta understand, and you gotta understand this: the most important thing when you're saying about you gotta understand the word socialism. You gotta know what that means. First of all, you have to know that it's sharing the wealth. Communism is basically just controlling the wealth for them, is institutionalized. So what we have to understand is, okay, no, I have never said that they have done nothing for like Fred Hampton and all this stuff. They've done a lot for Black people. Yes. Kwame Ture, yes, done a lot for Black people. I will never in my word think about it, but you have to understand who was the founders and who created this concept. Who were the true owners? And that's what no one wants to talk about.
I do. I would love to talk about the real owners. That's all I talk about. Because the workers should be the real owners. Because they're the real contributors. I love talking about who the real owners are. That's my favorite topic. The workers should be the real owners. And when you say who created socialism or communism, communism is the way human beings lived thousands and thousands of years ago, even before agriculture. I mean, we wouldn't have survived if we had a situation where one person killed all of the antelopes and hoarded 1,000 antelopes in an area and said, I'm not going to give you any of my antelopes unless you work for me. Human beings wouldn't have made it this far. We lived in a way that was based on, that was for the community, for our society. But the problem was back then, we still faced scarcity. In 2023, scarcity is not a problem. We've reached a point where poverty does not have to exist anywhere on the globe. So I think when we talk about who the real owners are, I think we need to talk about who the real contributors are. And that's been the workers since day one.
Let me jump in there and say two things. Ben, you've been on these types of panels long enough to know you got to mute your mic when you ain't speaking, because it seems like you're listening to the show off of YouTube as opposed to through the StreamYard application. Listen to it through StreamYard, you won't have the feedback, and you got to mute your mic. The second thing I'm going to say is I think that's a great discussion, but I got to cleanse the palate. I got to cleanse the palate before 2 o'clock, right? So I'm going to go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 4. That topic, I'm sure, will come back next week because there's another Marxist conversation Trigger Happy had up that I swapped out here for Shoot the Breeze topic number 4. I swapped it out for this, so I'll bring that comment. If Trigger Happy wants to post more, he can do that during the week. Anyone who wants to post re-Africanization prompts, by all means, go join the Discord, post your topics on Shoot the Breeze channel.